Hi there, you guys. Welcome back to my countdown of my top 20 favorite films of all times list. Let's get right into number 3. Number 3. Seven. Love how Seven is at number 3. Seven is my favorite David Fincher movie. Now, again, continuing with my theme of, I seem to have a thing on this list of things that I generally love. So I have like Coen Brothers, I have Lars von Trier, and now I have David Fincher. David Fincher is by far one of my favorite directors. He has produced some of my favorite films. But in terms of my top 20 favorite list, you know, of course, I'm only going to pick one for this list, and of course, the one I'm going to pick is Seven. I first saw this film at a fairly young age, like incredibly young. This movie came out in 1995. At the time, I would have been 5 years old, so I think I saw it when I was maybe 7 or 8, because I know it was at least somewhere in the late 90s, and I'm going to roughly guess it was in 1998. We had it on VHS, so that was how I first saw it. I just remember being very delightfully disturbed by this movie. It's sort of odd because at that time I wasn't the way I am now, where it's like I want to be kind of scared, I want to be frightened by stuff, and I feel like Seven, because I saw it at a fairly young age and I didn't really appreciate or I didn't really watch a lot of thrillers or horrors and stuff like that. I feel like watching Seven at a young age had sort of set the bar very high for what I would consider my likes and dislikes when it came to thrillers for the rest of my life. I'm sure that I could not find anybody who really disagrees that Seven is probably one of David Fincher's best movies, if not his best, and a lot of people will argue, you know, Fight Club is probably more or less on people's top lists. But Fight Club, I've never enjoyed as much as much as Seven. I think the reason I like Seven so much is because there is this element to it that is a little more original, because Fight Club was based on a book, whereas this is, you can tell that there's an element to Seven that is more original, that is more of his mind and of what David Fincher wants, of his vision. And I'm not saying I figured all this out when I was 7 or 8 years old. I'm saying that over time, after watching the movie many, many times, and having, you know, the bonus edition and watching all the various commentaries that you can get, which if you can get the extended cuts and the bonus stuff, there's the copy I have. Actually, hang on, I'm just gonna go grab it. So this is the DVD box set that I have of Seven, and it comes in a notebook-like case, which I absolutely love. And it has 2 DVDs in it, and of course, you know, one is the movie itself, and the other is the all the bonus material. And the movie itself has 4 different commentaries, all of which are extremely interesting to listen to, because they give you which ones are they? There's one that has David Fincher, Brad Pitt, and Morgan Freeman doing it, mainly focusing on the acting. And then you have one that focuses on the story, so it's got the writers, it's got the editor, and then it goes into pictures, so people who were responsible for making the film look the way it does, and then sound. Also, some of the bonus features that you can get on here is the exploration of the opening title sequence, which this movie is my absolute favorite opening sequence of all time. I love the opening sequence for Seven. The sheer amount of information that they can get across in an opening sequence, I don't think has ever been matched in the way that Seven does it, because let's face it, we spend a vast majority of the time, about 90% of the film, without our villain, without our main antagonist. He is virtually non-existent in the film. He doesn't show up until basically the climax of the film. So the opening title sequence is basically the quickest way for us to get a very good chunk of information about John Doe, without showing who he is, what his, you know, any kind of specific information like that. But it gets across a lot more of the subliminal information, a lot more of the information that gives a method to the madness as to why he would do something like this, his methodology, the OCD level of control that he has over what he's doing. It tells a lot about the character just in that opening sequence. It also has, deleted scenes, extended takes, alternate endings. It also actually has a great little section into exploring how they made all the notebooks for John Doe and how they created the looks for it. And they also have a track, I think, where you can listen to the audio track of the movie when it was mixed for the theater and versus where they mixed it strictly for this DVD, and you can listen to the differences, and it's really quite interesting. So if you can get this, I highly recommend it because I almost always end up finding something else to watch on this because I feel like I haven't watched everything. So I always end up watching things like 2 or 3 times and I'm like, oh, I'm finding out new information all the time and it's absolutely amazing. Now, getting back to an actual, review of the movie itself and why I like it so much. I think getting back to my idea of the fact that John Doe is very much an absent antagonist in this movie. Uh, Again, we only encounter him in his full presence, I will say, basically at the end of the movie. We do not we do not get the full impact of who this person is and who they are as a person, like relating as a human being, what they're like when you're sitting in a room with them. We do not understand what he is like until we get to the climax of the movie. And that's really interesting to have the presence of an antagonist somehow permeate throughout the rest of the movie, because you feel like you know who this guy is and you know why he does what he does, but we've never seen him on film until the end, and he's committed pretty much all of his crimes by the time we actually see him. So it's quite amazing that they managed to accomplish this in this film. Also, I will have to say that this is probably the very first film that I loved Brad Pitt in. It's not that I don't like Brad Pitt as an actor. I do, especially because I just put Inglourious Basterds on my list, and he's in that movie, and he's absolutely amazing in that movie. But for the most part, for the longest time, I could not get into Brad Pitt for some reason as an actor. Like, I kind of understood why everybody went gaga over him and was totally in love with him, but I couldn't see it for the most part. And after watching Seven, I didn't even see it when I was younger, like when I first saw Seven, and then it took years later after watching it again and again of sort of watching and realizing I love Brad Pitt in this movie. The way he portrays his character as sort of like this rookie cop who is kind of full of optimism in a weird way, but at the same time if it's sort of weird how he and Morgan Freeman play off each other as, the buddy cops in this movie, because it's not really a buddy cop movie, but that's kind of how it's played off in just more of a thriller sense. You have Morgan Freeman's character who is who very much understands the world that these people live in, that the city that they live in and the type of world that we live in now is filled with a lot of really disgusting and horrible people. And a vast majority of that is due to apathy, is due to the fact that people are willing to ignore other people's problems because it's easier in life to just deal with your own problems than to deal with other people's problems. And of course, we get a great show of that in the bar scene with him and Brad Pitt. But that's the kind of thing is Brad Pitt comes off as this much more less understanding, quick to judge kind of cop, but at the same time he has this sense of optimism about the human race, about the capacity people can have to be good, and he uses, I think, John Doe as the example of that's how fucked up people can get, and that we haven't really seen somebody like this in comparison. So it's like, no, there's still some hope for humanity there. And then you have Morgan Freeman, who generally you would think as the older, wiser kind of guy and sort of leading the rookie through this. And I know Brad Pitt's character isn't actually a rookie, but in comparison to how long Morgan Freeman's character has been in the business and has been a cop, he's a rookie by comparison. There is this sense of he has seen too much of the world and he knows too much of the world, and as a result the world has worn him down and he no longer believes in the optimism that Brad Pitt currently sees. I think another one of the reasons why I really did get into this movie and why I like it so much is because of the obvious religious subtext that goes on in this film. Well, obviously has a religious subtext. The whole point of the film is that this serial killer is killing people based on one of the seven deadly sins. And the religious undercurrent of this film is predominantly, I think, interesting to me because it's kind of fascinating to learn about what people see as sin in specifically the Judeo-Christian culture. And the fact that, like, regardless of the fact that whether or not I belong to a religion or not, there are some aspects where I can be like, yeah, that person's kind of terrible because of X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, I don't feel like people should be killed just because they have issues in their lives, especially considering the environment that this movie takes place in. It doesn't surprise me at all that these people act the way they do. It's more a fact that their circumstances and the society that they were grown up into and that they were a product of is responsible for what they had to do and what they had to endure and what they had to end up going through that basically leads up to their death, because it's a result of those scenarios that has led to this man wanting to kill them just simply because of the fact that this society is completely fucked up. And that in and of itself is kind of fucked up. Probably also one of the best parts about this movie is, of course, what's in the box? That never gonna get old. So that's my number 3. Come back tomorrow for number 2, and stay tuned to find out what my number 1 favorite film of all time is. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you later.